give it a couple minutes here. People will be jumping in. I'm going getting everything started here, and we'll be right back in. What I can do to
Joe, do I need to hit record, or is this going to record automatically? Joe, we lost your audio.
okay, here. Hey, and who is moderating here?
I am. How
You are?
doing?
All
Yep.
right.
Do I need to hit record for this?
It's already recording.
That's what I was noticing as I just looked.
Yeah, and you're now the you're the host. All you have to do is hit end when you're done.
Perfect.
You don't have to do anything.
Perfect.
All right, so I'm out. I gotta start the other one.
Cool beans. Well, Brett, it looks like you're the only one that got emailed out the cool HETMA background. I'm feeling jealous, left out. Just kidding.
I did not. I saw Craig had it yesterday and I asked him for it.
Cool. No, it's
Do
all
you
good.
want it? I can email it to you.
Oh, no, it's all good. It's all good. I'm teasing anyway. I don't know if I look good with a dark background. I'm padded up the way it is these days with my boo-boos and all. So there we go. Thanks, Ryan. Get her done. Cool. Hey, by the way, safety awareness for everyone campus for classroom support. The little electric stand-up scooters are not a safe item or value for getting around campus, just for what it's worth. They dump very, very easily, and they're very expensive ER bills if you do. Just my PSA for the day.
Banned on our campus for employees.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's probably coming our way too. $38,000 for 4-hour visit to the Boulder County, Boulder Community ER. Yeah. Oh, and that's the start. I have to have shoulder surgery now too, because I ripped 3 muscles. So, yeah.
Golf carts for us, they're a lot safer.
See, that's what I keep saying, but they're like, oh, we don't have anywhere to park them. And I'm like, facilities has like dozens of the darn things parked right next to where we could, but it's an uphill battle. Oh, well.
Until they go missing.
Well, that's, yeah.
We have one currently like missing in action. Can't find it. We figure it's in the bay at this point because we're right on the water, and we've had incidences of them getting stolen because golf carts belong in the water, right? Joyriding, exactly.
All right, wonderful. Well, hey, it's 12:31. Why don't we kick off the shindig? Welcome everyone. My name is Greg Carsons. I'm going to be moderating our session here for HETMA. Welcome HETMA members and our corporate affiliates and so on that are here today as well. Glad to have you, and hope we have a great productive conversation here. I'm joined by Dwayne Smith, Brett Isner, and Will DeWitt to have a conversation about management and whatever Mike said. So kicking that off, just very briefly, I'm Senior AV Design Engineer at the University of Colorado here in Boulder, as some of you may have just heard. Here in the Rockies, where we started off the day with a moderate -15 wind chill, so and a couple inches of fresh snow. So for those coming skiing this weekend, they're going to have some nice pow to get kicking. So let's just go left to right here. Dwayne, you want to introduce yourself then, please?
Yes, Dwayne Smith. I'm with Old Dominion University. We're in Norfolk, Virginia. It's right on the coast of Virginia, and we hit a nice 80 degrees and sunny today. So wanted to make sure I rub that in.
Yeah, our high is 14 Fahrenheit, 14 degrees Fahrenheit. So yeah,
You
only
keep that
60.
out there.
Yeah. So fun. Oh my goodness. Welcome, Britt.
Yeah, I'm Britt Yenser. I'm the Director of Event Technology at Moravian University. We're in northeastern Pennsylvania. We're a small private institution with fewer than 3,000 FTE. And it is, for the record, an unseasonable 60 degrees today.
Oh, y'all are just bringing it. Well, that's okay. It's fine. It's something to look forward to. So, Will, tell us about yourself.
Hey there, I'm Will DeWitt. I'm the Learning Environments Manager for USC, and we're at an unseasonably 45 degrees.
Okay, so now we're splitting the difference between there and Virginia on the other end of the coast or the other end of the country. Well, that's something else. Wonderful. So our idea here today is, and we've got some talking points we want to get to. We're also interested in conversations. I'm seeing, oh, sorry, they already got some posts in the comments there. It's a -16 Celsius in Toronto. Yeah, that's some kind of cold. So we want to start our conversation on management and what we do in higher education with our students and our staff and so on. We had talked about or titled the thing management. I'd actually kind of like to throw out the conversation, and this is kind of a curveball to the panelists just a little bit, but I think they may enjoy it. And just start off our conversation talking about how you view management versus leadership in our arena, and how you would view or look at that type of thing. So I know that's a little bit of a curve. So I'm not gonna pull any one person on the spot out of the three of you, but let whoever wants to go first kind of maybe see what they think of leadership versus management and how we can just get us started here. It's okay. I see, Will, you kind of smiling pretty good there. I think you maybe have a thought.
Well, there's a difference between kind of leading and inspiring people and then the day-to-day management, which is a lot of it's the not fun stuff, the paperwork, the planning, and not actually being able to get out in front of people, cast the vision, and kind of get people moving towards a goal, which is what's a little bit more satisfying, but you can't really have one without the other.
Very good. No, I would agree wholeheartedly. It is about leading, inspiring, and not the minutia. And I guess I hate to use that word. That sometimes sounds derogatory. But Dwayne, you got any thoughts there?
No, I think you're right, and I think you have to put different hats on based on who you're working with. So if you have someone that's been in the environment for a while, it may be more of a leadership role. But if you have someone that is new and needs a little bit more management to get going. So I see it as two different styles, and it's based on who you're working with and the environment you're in at the time. And it could be different for each, I want to say employee, but each staff member you're working with, based on what works best for them as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely agree. And even coworkers too, I think, to some extent. So
yeah, in your role in a project, whatnot. So it doesn't always mean to supervisory, but based on your role in a project and from that perspective as well.
absolutely. Britt, what are your thoughts on leadership versus management?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what I'm hearing. I think that both leadership and management require some level of self-reflection, but I think that leadership lends itself to a deeper self-reflection and understanding of self and how you relate to your reports.
I would wholeheartedly agree. So on that more note, or thinking of one of the topic areas we wanted to talk about today, and I'm looking off to my right here because I've got a cheat sheet just to make sure that I don't miss something exciting. Looking at thinking of staff or direct reports of hiring these days and staffing and the challenges you all are facing. Anybody want to take off on that one first? Brett, you actually had a great comment about a new position and how you were able to actually gain FTE in your staff. Can you speak to that maybe to start us off?
Sure, yeah. So previously, for many years, the media services department, as we call it, was myself and our director of engineering, as he was recently retitled, which is Craig Underwood. Hi, Craig. And so, you were managing the whole department as 2 full-time employees, and we split where he does classroom support, actual engineering work, and I do the event support, so more resource-based and more working with Craig to discuss what should be installed in support specifically of the many, many events that we do. And we had a point where even that event work was becoming too much for one human being and the small staff of student employees who we have. I do upwards of 500 events over the course of a fiscal year. And so I luckily had known the importance of data as soon as I had started in my role, and immediately started determining what information is important to us, what information is important to this department, and started gathering data. And I was able to present that data and its story to the VP of our department, who took it up to PC to ultimately prove this work has expanded to a point where Britt needs a direct report. And so now I have my audiovisual specialist.
Very good. That's a huge benefit, because we've had personal conversations, and I know with a small school, you're wearing many hats. So it's nice to, I'm sure, park one of those hats briefly, or at least temporarily for a while. Mike makes a great comment, and God we trust, everyone else bring data. That's very, very pointed. Will and Dwayne, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to jump on there. I thought Britt brings up a good point there. Actually, 2 good points. Using data to tell a story, because data is the way you can get over. Everybody acts on how they feel, what they perceive. The higher ups aren't always going to perceive what things are actually like on the ground. But if you can bring data, so you bring hard facts so that you've got your story straight, and then you convince them and tell them a story so that they understand what you need and what things are like, that's really the best way probably to get things done. Another thing I've noticed is finding out what's important to your boss. Does your boss care about data? Does your boss care about ticket count? Does your boss care about complaints? If you can find what's important to them and show how this new position or this change or whatever it is you want to do, how it's going to affect them, and make it personal and what they care about, that gets you a lot farther than trying to throw out something, because everybody's got things they care about, everybody's got things they don't. It's finding that balance.
I would like to add to that too. When we talk about data, I think it's important to have both quantitative and qualitative. So when I was presenting this data, it was not just numbers and charts, it was also written feedback that I had received from people. And I felt like that was proving this is not a Britt problem, right? Like Britt does her job very well, clearly. This is a numbers problem that we're looking at. And I also had reached out to someone on campus who was in a VP role who I have a strong relationship with, but he is not a technical person. He was actually the VP of our DEI office. And I said, can I buy you a coffee and have you look at these numbers and you help me figure out what the story is from a less technical standpoint, so that when this information goes up to people who are making decisions and there's only one tech VP in the room and everyone else is, in their own role, that it makes sense to everyone.
We are 11 minutes into this conversation, and I have 3 different notes of management equals communication. in different factors. Will made a good point a second ago that was straight out of my master's program with telling a story, which is perfect. Same thing Britt was doing. But then it's just, I think it's a great point in that. Dwayne, why don't you round us out there on that particular area?
So I actually share my age a little here, but I've been at ODU for coming up on 21 years. And when we started, our department was me and 2 other people. That's it. And over time, as workload growed and we're able to provide data on how our support grew and what it meant to our resources had to grow alongside that support. Today, we have not only increased our classroom support team, but I have 6 techs and 1 manager now over there. I have another team, an engineering team with 2 individuals, and a whole event support team with 3 individuals over there. And now we're standing up a streaming team to support live streaming events. So we have a full department over time. And the only way I could provide that is providing good data, but showing that as the university built more buildings, as we built more classrooms, as classrooms went to the old transparency overheads to providing digital content in every room, showing the growth of technology alongside the growth of support is very important. And just like Will and Britt said, to tell that story, but also to show the value. For our engineering team, I treat that just like a vendor would. They have to have an hour, every hour they work has to be billed to a project. We're not billing actual money, but my monthly reports now show here is the value that these individuals brought to the university. And if I share that what the hourly cost is if we outsource that work. So there's a real direct relationship on the value to that. And it just goes on to what was said earlier is providing data, keeping the data and presenting the data. And that's where I think for a good manager, we're talking about manager and leader, that's when you put the manager role hat on is, all right, I need all this data. I need to make sure it's easy for the staff to put that together. So it's not burden, but also understand how important that is. Getting that from our service tickets, pulling all that together and then structuring the team based on that. So I think this is really good examples, and data is king in all of this.
I really like what you're doing as far as job costing, even though it's not billed, but I like that, but also taking that one step further and going, gosh, if we had actually outsourced this, here's the justification for why your decision was a good decision. So the next time, what I'm looking at that is the next time you have to go and ask for, hey, we've grown even more, we're delivering more services, we need another justification for another FTE or 2 or whatever that might be. They're not even going to question it. It's almost going to be they're just going to accept it and move on. It seemed like it,
At one point in time, there was a question, should we just outsource all classroom support? So one of the things I got together is, all right, how many classes do we support? How many students in each class? What's the cost per minute per student? So if a unit, a classroom's down, here's what's costing university, and how would that benefit us for being on site other than outsourcing this? And once I put all that together, there was no other question on should we outsource service, because it would be a huge expense trying to meet the same level of service we provide in-house.
I can believe that for sure. So kind of moving on to a similar topic here, and that is staffing models. You have a fairly large staff versus, I think, Will, you're probably in between, or maybe on the larger scale, but Britt's going to be on the smaller scale. It'd be nice to compare and contrast staffing models and, how you divide and conquer, because that kind of goes into roles and responsibilities to a certain extent as well. Let's chat in that area a little bit on staffing models and FTEs versus students, and then student management as well. You have to have, do you use students to supervise other students, or is it so on? So those are just, some good thoughts there. Britt, I know you have quite a few students, and that's, I think, one of the secrets to your success. Why don't you kind of kick us off there?
Yeah, so up until June, when my AV specialist started, I relied extremely heavily on student employees because they were my labor outside of just myself. And even now, one other person makes a difference, but not an astronomical difference. So we still are relying on the student employees for labor in pretty intense ways. Because we are a small institution, we make it work with a staff of between 8 to 10 student employees, currently have 7. And we are always actively recruiting because, as you all know, there's high quote unquote turnover with students. Even if you manage to keep them for 4 years, they're going to graduate. So we're always looking to how do we replace that body on our staff. As far as the division of labor, I primarily work through the higher level planning sort of conversations. And then I'm also boots on the ground doing active AV support for events. The AV specialist is more just strictly boots on the ground. And we both take turns managing the student employees. Having him has been really valuable to me in that I really value one-on-ones with the student employees. We do a one-on-one at least once a month, but when you're meeting with anywhere from 8 to 10 students individually for 30 minutes, that's a time suck. So being able to share that labor with Zach has been really helpful.
So your students then, so you have all of your students underneath an FTE then, by the sounds of it. Will or Dwayne, do you use any student supervisors for like some of your older students or those that may have been with you a little longer, graduate students perhaps?
Yeah. So we've got 4 FTE and about 120 students because we run 24/7 and support several other things. So we've got, I think, the largest number, at least in ITS. I'm not sure about campus, but so a lot of my time, I don't get to do too much direct one-on-one with the students. Instead, I rely on the FTEs to direct them, to schedule them, to handle a lot of the day-to-day. And then underneath the FTE, we have senior leads, which is 1 or 2 students that have been with us for a while. Then underneath them, we have leads, which are students that have been with us usually about a year or so. And then we usually have like 10 of those. And then under them, all the rest of the student techs. So we kind of, it's good because it helps give us, helps teach the students leadership skills, helps give them some structure. But we can't know all 120 students and everything that's going on. So we kind of need that extra, almost middle management layer between the FTEs and the students. It also helps us get kind of honest feedback, because a lot of the students, especially if they've only been there a couple months, they're not always going to, tell you exactly what's going on because maybe they're embarrassed, they're afraid of getting in trouble, whatever. So it helps give us students we can kind of form a little bit more of a relationship with and develop that trust so that we can kind of get a little bit more knowledge of what is actually going on.
Well, you mentioned a second ago that you're 24/7. Did I hear that correct? That's what I
Yep.
thought. Somebody else had commented, woof.
Yeah, that's why we have so many.
So are you all doing more than classrooms, or do you have like MOOC, or what's the need case for 24/7?
Classrooms are our main focus. We also manage this, got 2 computer labs. We've also got, we manage library study space, which is like basically the bottom floor of the library, where we also have study rooms, the digital creative lab, the e-gaming lab, some video and audio production suites that are just about to come online. But what we wind up using our overnight students for the most is doing our turn down service, room checks. We go through and we check all the rooms every night. And overnight, we usually only have like 3 or 4 on duty between like midnight and 4 or 5 a.m. But it also helps because it gives us somebody that can do stuff overnight that's always there. If something comes up or if we got something we need to do in between classes, we can get them to take care of it for the most part for us.
Wow, that's impressive operationally to have that kind of coverage. We here have students for the same as some others are saying, for evenings and weekends, for special events, same sort of thing. Dwayne, how about you?
Yeah, we're a little over 250, 260 students. And I built a student pipeline. So the idea with students is I want when they leave to have some type of work experience, definitely a professional work development skills. But when they leave here, they're going to leave they're going to graduate with something, but they're going to need some type of resume or a job related skill. So I built a full pipeline in our IT department. So we would hire them in our lab consultant position first. And I understand, Will, because we have a 24/5 and we go 24/7 during exams period, but we have 24/5 support in our learning commons in our labs. And we utilize our students for that. And then they would, another tier up would be a student lead. So during that group, we have a lead that manages that team. And then we have lab assistants, and they would oversee all the teams within the lab consultants. And then we actually have classroom support group. So they would work into that side. We have a hardware team. So that team is more engineering mindful. So they would work into that, and they would be where they're swapping out projector lamps back in the day, but cleaning filters, working for install and life cycles. They would work for that for our hardware team. And then the other members in our IT department, say our network team had positions. We would say who's on track to be a network programmer or cybersecurity, and we would work to get them into those jobs so they can get on to job experience as close as they can to a related field. And we even have a hiring team. I have a group of people that their whole purpose is to interview students, to get the jobs out there. So it's once it got up and running, it's a full self-sufficient entity from start to finish. And we've even had students come through and go to full-time positions at the university. We'll do internal job fairs where we'll have companies that are looking for students that we meet with and facilitate that. The university does have what we call a career management group that focuses on student job placement. We work with them as well, but I think we are the largest student employer on campus. And we couldn't do it. If they took away my student budget, we might as well just shut the door because we just couldn't do it. And it's a big part of our operation.
That's impressive, frankly. That's y'all schools aren't any bigger than we are. We just I don't know how we're getting by. That's impressive. And
it's a win-win. This is what I don't understand. The university is really happy to give money for student employment. I mean, we got regular general funds, we got federal grants and whatnot that doesn't come out of my budget as well that we can utilize. There's a lot of opportunities there for student employment. There's a lot of people just don't want to deal with what they feel is a hassle. But once you get them in here and get them going, I even have students in our engineering team working directly with our engineers designing AV systems. So it's opening up opportunities that these students wouldn't normally get to see, just because one, they thought they just wanted a job, but two, now they're looking at career paths and understanding what's opportunity out there for them.
We've had a few that have student workers that have turned into FTEs over the years that did not start off as this being a job that they are a job.
Yeah.
That they turn into a career, just like you're saying. It's pretty cool to introduce them as we've discussed.
It's really rewarding too. It's rewarding to see them come through there. Then when they go to get that dream job and they come over and they're so excited that they got that job because of the experience they had here. Let's face it, it's why we all work in higher education, and so we can help build these young minds and get them going. And I don't see any better way to have a direct impact on that than having student workers, because the technology we put in the classrooms is being used, but I mean, we don't see it. We're not there when it's used. We're just there when it's not working. We're not being able to actually see the benefit. But when the students are in the office and you get to work with them, and That's the real joy of what we do, in my opinion.
I'm seeing another takeaway here today as a possible is, you know, for us as HETMA to look at what could we do as an organization to create a, you know, framework for teaching students so that there's some common knowledge similar to not CTS, but maybe a tech badge like Avixa does or something along that lines that would give, you know, a common recognized picture for students here and for employers if they look out and see that that's something that's recognized. So anyway, just a thought there. Thinking on looking at roles, we talked about students, and Dwayne, I think you mentioned, you know, having an engineering staff and all, and some others. What are the type of FTE type positions? Do you have any like specialized that take on particular roles within your teams? Or how are you organized? How do you divide labor amongst your teams?
It's interesting. My team has defined roles for the FTE, but a lot of what we wind up doing is, especially when it comes to managing students, because I've got one guy that's the endpoint engineer. I've got one person who's in charge of like interfacing with teachers and so on. But when it comes to the students, we wind up kind of dividing based on what their talents are. I've kind of let them have leeway to kind of decide what they want to do. Because one really likes scheduling, one likes working with the students more. And so trying to let them play to their strengths as much as I possibly can has helped kind of, well, one, take some of the load off of me. So I'm not having to handle all of that, but also give them experience of their own managing people and managing students. So if they are interested in going into management in the future, then they've already got that experience in kind of a safe environment where I can kind of help guide them, come in and help when I need to, but it lets them make it their own and kind of take ownership of things.
Very cool. Dwayne or Britt, got any follow-up?
As far as our department structure goes, we're underneath the umbrella of IT. And on our campus, if you touch tech in any way, you're under the IT umbrella. So, you know, you have the help desk, you have the instructional designers, the ed techs, all of us are just in the IT umbrella. And then AV support specifically, we have the director of AV engineering who takes care of the classroom support, the classroom build outs, the design of the systems, all of that interesting and complex work. He reports to the ACIO of infrastructure, and I take care of all of the AV tech for events and for these portable pop-up situations. I report to the ACIO of client success, and then I have my direct report, the AV specialist, who, like I said before, is more of the boots on the ground, and he's my little buddy. He does what I need him to do. And then our student employee workforce primarily is actively staffing the events, and they're essentially our labor force boots on the ground.
Wonderful. And I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this right. Graham, from the UK, they've actually launched a formal AV apprenticeship scheme as well, which he says seems to be getting a lot of traction. So that's pretty cool. Thinking on some ancillary subjects relevant to budgets or to staff size and so on is budgets, and how you all deal and manage your budgets. Are they just appointed for you, or how much role or influence do you have in budget decisions for your department?
It kind of varies. When it comes to the FTE, I mean, that's fixed hourly or salary. The student budget, we get basically one big number for the year, and then they don't really care how many students we have as long as we have coverage and don't go over budget. So that's kind of how it works for us.
You know, the FTE keeps throwing me off because all my conversations, FTE is full-time enrollment. And so I have to stop and think, oh, you guys are talking full-time employee.
Sorry.
I'm very fortunate. I'm in all the budget decision meetings, allocation. So based on my operating budget, I'm very fluid on being able to present what we need and have justification. Our life cycle plan is a completely different allocation, but we get to manage that. But I put a 10-year plan together, present that up, it goes up. So I update that plan every so often, but since I've been here, I've gotten every dollar I've asked for because we're so organized. And the university has been really put a lot of focus to make sure we have good technology in the classrooms. When we have capital projects, we have the opportunity to be in on early to say, okay, this is how much money we recommend for the project based on the technology. So we're in a very fortunate spot on our side, and it wasn't by accident. We fought hard to get in this position, but we aren't receiving budgets. We're helping allocate budgets across the campus, and also along that is if a department wants to take a project or add technology to something, if they want my support team to be a part of it, my design team is going to be involved in the design side. So it's kind of how I want to say hold people hostage, but that's kind of how I play that is if you want our support, and we're known for our support, we need to be involved in the planning as well.
I think we're finally getting to that point. When I started here, we were a little behind that curve in that, design integration with capital projects. We're now finally, for the last about a year and a half, we're actually being involved in the programmatic phase as new projects are being brought online, and those early design and being asked finally, what do you think this is going to cost, and so on. So I'm excited about that, especially in my role, because that's exactly what I do from that particular thing.
Every now and then they get a wild hair and they go, you know what, let's see what this would cost. We outsource it. And I say, you know what, you guys go out there and have a consultant design this. And then a few weeks later, I'll get a phone call that says, let's go ahead and use your number, because their number is crazy. So when that first started, I used to really take offense to that, but now I welcome it, because I know out there, every consultant out there is going to drive the price crazy. And but then they come in and give me half of what the consultant said, and we try to make it work.
Yeah, no, it's very much so. I think it's a good check for reality check for the leadership. But I think, as you're well aware, the ability when you have standards, when you have internal, I don't know what I would assume with the staff of your size, you have your own programmers or programming ability that, just the ability to repeat, not necessarily the exact thing, but at least within the standard equipment and so on, the familiarity makes you extremely cost effective.
That and the ownership. This is what people don't put value in. When a vendor is done, they're gone.
Oh,
We're
true.
here to stay. We take ownership and pride in every project, every design, every integration, every interaction. And that goes a long way. And there's all other organizations like facilities and the construction design, they see that, because when they moved from project to project, and we always tell them, so when a new building comes in, I'm in there for the duration of that building, not when the project's done and they're moving on to the next one. We're there, we're owning that equipment. And I've been very fortunate the university realizes that and understands that there's ownership in my team to be involved in this.
Very good. Britt, what are your thoughts there?
What were you, Boujay? What is this word? No, so we handled the student employment budget in a very similar way that Will does, and that is primarily where I'm spending is just in the payment of the student employees. As far as paying for equipment, I am not allowed to touch the monies. So I can suggest things and say, I think that we need this particular thing installed, and I think this is how this should work. But at the end of the day, especially given the current climate, I am not allowed to spend the money. So I primarily am finding ways to make things work with what we already have.
All right, well, that's challenging, but it's also, it's obviously a long-term opportunity then, to see what you can do with that, I guess, hopefully. And, I think you're going to do well with hopefully seeing some change there in that regard as well in the future, having some influence. I don't doubt that a bit. Looking at some other topics, one that we had down here was looking at different tools. What kind of tools do you rely on to manage your teams or that are involved in either service management, time management, and so on?
We rely pretty heavily on Slack for internal communications. We've got a ticketing system that's good for generating data like we talked about before. The trick is to make sure that we capture that, because it's easy to get something, run off, fix it real quick, and then not log that you actually got that, so it doesn't look like you're doing quite as much as you are. But yeah, that's really our two biggest tools that we use just to manage internally. And then of course, email and all that. We've got a scheduling software that we use to manage our students. But yeah, I'd be curious though, Dwayne, how you schedule your students.
There's a product, $500 a month, called When to Work. It's all online. They get it on their phone, and there's other products out there we've been using it for years, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That was called Window Works?
When to Work.
When to Work.
I'll put it in
Okay,
the
sure.
thing. Yeah, what's great about it, and I'm not here to sell it, I could have open positions and say, look, we have open house this weekend. So I have open house, I need these positions. Who needs the hours? And they can jump in and say, I want that. And so they can go in and jump in, and then I got support for open house this weekend.
So because I'm a baller on a budget, I use what we already have. So we have Google Calendar. That is how I'm scheduling people. So I will take all of the event information and logistics, put it into our department Google Calendar, and students actually volunteer themselves for shifts. That's how we manage when people are working. And that's a really nice model because it takes some pressure off of me and off of the AV specialist, that we don't have to actively tell people when they're working. They just sign up for what works for them and we keep rolling. And then as far as keeping track of things, I used Google Sheets, and Excel would work the same way, to create a manager's landscape. So I have tabs for each person who I am responsible for, and I have columns of, who is this person at work? What do I need to know about them? What do I need them to learn? What are they already good at? Et cetera, et cetera. Where is the best place for us to meet? How do I manage this person specifically? The best ways of reaching this person, and just keeping track of all of that information in a spreadsheet.
A tool that I use personally just to keep myself organized, especially I saw Graham talking about using Microsoft Teams, if you're involved in Teams, is Microsoft Power Automate. It's kind of like if this, then that, if you've ever heard of that. It works with other software. You can integrate it with Slack, with Google stuff, but it works best with Microsoft. Basically, you can set up, there's a lot you can do with it, but I use it as just basically to set up triggers. So if this comes in, then do this. I've got in Slack a specific channel that takes all my emails, all my notifications from all the different apps, and puts them in just one channel. So I can go there and I can just kind of scroll down and get the fire hose instead of having to check and click and log into 10 different sites. I can see everything that's come in one spot.
That's great.
What's nice about our product is at each payroll, I can run a report. This is how much money I spent, and I can even sign it by projects, like so we're working open house this weekend, so I can assign those open house and how much did open house cost us. So we can look at that. How many hours did it cost us, to not just money, but resource hours. And again, back to our data conversation, having stuff in there that you can pull that data out and justify. So if they come back and says, Dwayne, how come you're spending so much hours on this? I said, well, hold on a second. Do you want me to support open house? Here's what it costs. And so we can go back and do that granular by event and by what we're doing.
Seen a couple other in the chat here that Microsoft Teams using shifts. I'm not familiar with that particular one, but may have to write that one down. Joanna mentions Airtable, Notion Space, and then Microsoft Planner. Apparently there's different boards you can use in there, and I've seen that using it like a project management methodology in that particular regard, if I'm not mistaken. And then Chris is mentioning that they use Team Dynamics, which apparently dumps right into Teams. So that's awesome. Looking here just to see where we're at on time, wanted to kind of, how far out, we've talked about a bunch of different areas here, but one of you mentioned a bit ago about looking into the future. How far out do you look planning wise? How are you looking, especially these days? Of course, we're not going to talk about material supply issues, but just looking at people planning issues and budgets and expansions. And with the university, are you looking at obviously more than a year, but 2 years, 5 years, or even 10 years? How far out do you look at, or does it vary by subject when you're looking at planning and goal setting, strategic planning, and so on?
I've got a plan out to 2032 when I retire. So after that, I don't care. That's both our classroom life cycle, labor, everything, all the way out there. Now I update it annually, so don't think I just do it and it's done. But every time we add a new project, new building, we update that to meet that need. And that accounts for inflation as well. Obviously, my inflation numbers the past 2 years were a little off, but it does account for inflation.
Yeah, that's a challenge across the board, especially with fuel and fuel prices too, are even way worse, unfortunately. So.
And to be honest, even with some of the other things we do, it wasn't me just sitting the ground going, you know, I'm bored today. Let me go and put together a 10-year plan. It was the phone rings. Hey, I need this now. I'm like, you know, I'm tired of this. Let me go ahead and have it ready. So when I get that call, I say, all right, give me a minute. Here you go. And so that's kind of the trial and error. Once you get burnt, like, all right, so I just got a call last week. Hey, we have this much money. We need to spend it right now. We can't find anybody else to spend it. So hold on a second. I'm ready. So even this time of year when I know budgets are coming tight and they need somebody that can order stuff and get them in fast, I always have things in the chute ready to go.
That I guess proactive mentality by the sounds of it, obviously. And then of course data analytics go right into that. So Britt, how are you looking at planning strategic goals, setting and so on? How many years out, or does it vary?
It very much varies depending on the task. And because my focus is specifically the support of events, that makes it a little bit more challenging. So we have certain things that obviously happen annually or biannually at whatever, that I can strategically plan for those and see how can this change, improve, etc. And so I could be planning that a year or two out. But then also events have a habit of popping and, you know, there's less time to plan for that. And as far as planning for management, like the student employees, I'm usually planning at least a semester out. So for example, if I know in the spring semester, I'm going to have 3 students graduate, then in the fall semester, I'm working to replace those students. So shorter timelines than some other folks.
Yeah, my timeline's pretty short. I'm about a year. In my previous job where we did projects and events, we were planning a lot farther out and doing like Dwayne said and keeping things, you know, on the shelf ready to pull out. But since I'm mostly just support, I'm very reactive right now. And so I plan out as far as I can, but it's mostly as far as our project team kind of comes and says, we're going to be redoing this building or redoing that or whatever, then we'll kind of plan, okay, well, how's that going to affect support? But when it comes to just managing like students, it's very much semester to semester because you don't know who's going to stick around and who's not. A lot of mine go off and get internships for the summer, and then some of them come back, some of them don't. So you just kind of have to be ready to see who's coming and who's going. As far as our FTE, we're always trying to add more because like everyone, we don't have enough staff, but that's always just a long process getting any kind of new positions approved.
Well, as we're getting close here, we've got a few minutes left here, but I wanted to put a reminder out that Mike made a good point here, talking about support about this in the next breakout session in a while. There's an SLE discussion today, and looking for folks to join us that might have an interest in that. Sounds like there's quite a bit here possibly as well. We can continue that conversation, building those support things. So looking for questions or other thoughts you all might have. I know we talked service management. Do you who's using what tools for like service management, like ITSM specifically? Like ServiceNow or?
Service.
We've got ServiceNow. In my
ServiceNow.
previous job, we had Team Dynamics.
That's right. Okay. And then you're using Slack for your comms channel. We use ServiceNow with Teams. We're big on the Microsoft Enterprise platform here at CU. Britt, what do you have?
So our larger IT umbrella uses ServiceNow, but I primarily use 25 Live because, again, I'm working with events, and where do we need to be supporting that specifically? And events are tied to reservations and rooms. So I worked really closely with our event management team to strategically build out the 25 Live request form, where questions are strategically asked in the form to gather what AV tech is going to be needed to support that event. And so that's what I'm interfacing with most often.
Understandable. So let's see here, Zendesk and then Dynamics 365. That's one. Oh, they created a ticket system for them. Joseph mentions Freshservice. That's one I'm not familiar with. Do we have any questions then from our audience? We've got a great group here. It's been very active in the chat window here, making some good comments, timelines for budgets, some interesting spans here between the challenges that COVID produced and then refresh cycles based on, of course, as we're all experiencing equipment delays and what that's done. I know we've got stuff that we're 3 years behind on because we just couldn't do it 3 years ago, and then materials got laid, and then the materials got canceled, because they dropped a bunch of lines. Certain manufacturers dropped a bunch of product, so then we had to redo. So it's been an interesting, very interesting. I'm not going to talk about delays specifically, but about changes in the technology and how that's affected your models, and both from a support perspective and how challenging is it to keep up from a support perspective. With all the changes that are happening so quickly, how does that affect what you do on a day-to-day or for your crews?
Well, the technology changing has actually been beneficial to us, especially as things move to the cloud. It's given us a lot more remote access so that we can have students, when a call comes into the service desk, immediately be able to turn around and try and log into the classroom to see if they can see what is going on. Instead, because as soon as we send somebody over there, it's going to be 10 minutes before they can actually get to the classroom to even start. So as much as we can do either without sending someone or while somebody is walking, it helps us out a lot. It also gives us more tools when we need to escalate things up to level 2 and 3 to the engineer support, that we've already got more information that we can give them, and then the engineers can go back and review the logs and see what actually happened.
We have very similar in that regard and experiences. So yeah, that can't help but appreciate the ability of a networked enterprise and some of the dashboards that are starting to come out. It'd be nice if we could consolidate that, though. Dwayne?
That's the best part about the job, is keeping up with technology. If you really, I did a presentation a long time ago on this, but if you really think, back in the 60s, 70s, back in that area, people had a full career in our industry and technology didn't change. And now, since the last 25 years, we have every 5 to 7 years, we have a major technology refresh. We went from SD to HD. We've gone to 4K. We've gone to AV over IP. You stop and think how much changes we've saw in our industry just in the last 25 years. Just take the last 25 years and how much we've had to keep up with. And now we're looking at supporting streaming services, everything else we got to deal with, Zoom. It's amazing. I tell you, it's what I live for. I live for the challenge. I live for trying to figure out the problems. I remember I worked for an integrator called the Whitlock Group before I started ODU. And I almost didn't take the job because I was like, this must be the most boringest place to work at a university. What do they do all day? It must be the same thing over and over and over. And I can sit here and tell you, after 21 years in, there hasn't been two identical days yet. And I tell you, I live for it. I'm looking for that. What's that next thing that's going to come up on us? We have to learn, adapt, and figure out how we're going to support it. It's, my opinion, is the best part of what we do.
I wholeheartedly. Britt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think obviously technology is going to change and grow. We saw a major boom in hybrid and the need for the correct technology to support and maintain hybrid environments, both in our classrooms and in the areas we most frequently use for more informal gatherings, event support, etc. So just having those conversations of what is the best microphone, speaker, webcam, where do we place it? And if we can't install it, then how do we make it work? What resources can we get, or what resources do we already have that can support this new hybrid need? And I find that the hybrid model is much more complex in terms of the tech knowledge needed, in terms of this is what I now need to teach students and prepare them for. It's much more challenging than what we were doing previously. And these soft skills that you need to teach people in order to successfully do something in a hybrid way, like the camera is over there, make sure you look at the camera, things like that.
Oh, that's good. Absolutely. It's what keeps us moving. Mike makes a good question, or has a good question here rather. What data have you been able to collect that seems to be the most impactful to your leadership to justify either more hires or budget? What data would be the most impactful? Dwayne, you seem to have a pretty good repertoire of data collection. You might be able to start us off there.
There is no one. I couldn't tell you, there's no one that this made the decision. I think that really, it depends on what you're going after. You're going after more support staff, then you need to look at your support model. Here, I'm sure most people have the standard university classrooms, and we have classrooms called departmental owned classrooms. So we looked at, all right, we're staffed to support the university classrooms, but we go on call so much for the other rooms. We don't say no, we go to help. And I tracked all that. So look, here's how much calls are going in to support these other rooms. I need 2 more positions to really do this right. 2 more positions we just got. So these are type of things depending on what you're trying to achieve. If you're looking for funding for technology, what's the use in there? Can you show what the use growth was in the past 5 to 10 years and see the trend, and then predict what it's going to be the next 5 to 10 years? Well, Britt was talking about the event support. Have me pull up our monthly report for last month, as we did 409 hours worth of events last month. And we can go back for the past 10, 15 years and compare January's, and is this average, above average? And then we can start to see, okay, this is way above average. We only have this much staff. We're starting to see this trend up. When it hits this threshold, we need more support. And that's key when I present this, is I try to present it early. Say, when we hit this threshold, that's when we need to have a conversation, knowing we're going to hit that threshold. But if I wait till after the threshold is hit, you're running with your hair on fire, saying, I can't survive. And that's where I don't see that. I don't get the support when it's after the fact. So if I always say, hey, I'm watching this, here's a flag, we need to talk when we get to this level. that seems to go over a lot better from our perspective, from my experience, I should say.
Well,
Yeah, gathering the data definitely helps. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, finding out what arguments work on them, what's effective. Like, does the data help? Do they care about the ticket counts? Do they not care about that? Also, it gets managing up and sometimes a little sneaky, but find out what, if you can, find out what publications and podcasts your higher ups are listening to, the decision makers. If you can find out what they're being influenced by, you can kind of figure out how to position yourself to tie into that. Because everybody always wants more money. Everybody always wants more staff. Everybody wants this, that, and the other, and they've got to balance that. So how do you show to them that you deserve that and how that will help them or help what they want to do?
that's a good idea. Britt had another one earlier, and I meant to mention that, Britt, about taking people to coffee. You'd mentioned earlier about, in that communications chain, asking, if you're just trying to get an understanding, offering somebody a coffee and a donut or whatever, I think goes a long way. Britt, do you track like for events? Are you like what Dwayne was saying there, similar? Do you do something like that as well to, manage that flow and see where your cycles are and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm tracking, and Joanna put it in the chat, how many events are happening each month. So just what month did it take place? That tells me how much we're doing in any given month. What sort of technology was used for this event? So I track, did we exclusively use what we call the fixed technology? So it was something installed in the space. Did we use a combination of fixed technology and resources, meaning we had to add some additional equipment in addition to what was already in the room to meet this goal? Did we use only resources? So there's nothing installed there, and we made it work by adding additional equipment. Was it virtual? Was it hybrid? Who worked it? Did it require professional labor? How much professional labor was required? Was there a support call made? And all of those questions are also showing the story of complexity and the story of, just labor required, who has their boots on the ground and who's doing what.
Fantastic. Chris makes one, Chris Decker there makes a great point on data, comparing data, and that's using installation quotes from trash aggregators. Sorry, I thought that was pretty funny, but it's very true. It goes back to Dwayne's comment earlier about, sure, go out, administrator, go out and compare us to the commercial integrated world. Now, granted, there are some great contractors out there. I'm sure a lot of people have, but it's just, it's a different business. And again, it's a lot like we're here, we're doing the in-house, we own. I think there's a lot more personal responsibility for what happens in those spaces when we do them in-house. I know that, what we see here, but as we're getting close to the bottom of the hour, if you three, in fact, I'll join mine in there as well, would post how folks might get in touch with you if they want to continue the conversation, whatever the best way you think is to get a hold of you. We'll add that in there, and then ask if anyone has any other comments there or questions that we might unmute yourselves and let folks hear what you have to say.
And one thing I would add about sharing data, we mentioned about sharing your ticket data. That could bite you in the butt too. So be careful, because if you share that, hey, we have this much, we're going on this many calls, it could come back and say, well, why are your rooms not working? So these are the type of things to kind of understand. So if you're sharing data, you can control it a little bit too. One of the things we mentioned in the chat was reason my life cycles 5 to 6 years is because we see right around 5-year mark the tickets increase and technologies that's more than 5 years old. So I have a justifiable reason why, if anyone comes and explains the question why I'm spending money every so often is here, that this is it, is because the technology becomes unreliable at that point in time. And here's your cost, because the class was down for this. Here's your cost of student hours that we forfeited because of that technology.
I think that's a great way to wrap us out. It's telling, using the data to tell a story that needs to be told. I think, and using that because that paints a picture, it makes a great metaphor. So great conversation. We're going to head back to the lobby, I think they're calling it, if I got that correct, and continue the conversation. Their SLE conversation coming up in the next breakout. Look forward to hearing more about that. John made a great, interesting point there. Enjoyed sharing the metric that the budget I was given. We were at a 22.5-year refresh cycle. Wow, that's and gosh, I can't even think of what that would that's like pre-VGA, I guess. I don't know. RGB, maybe? I don't even know. It's 3-gun display or overhead projectors really at that 22 years ago. Wow, that's a long time ago. Well, listen, it's been great. If you're welcome to stay in here, or we can go back to the other room. I'm going to